The reason we want to do this is to institute more accountability than there currently is. If it's going to take hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to sue a car company for a product defect, then that's a barrier for people with just claims to recover. It compromises accountability. But if we have computer drivers have the same mechanisms for claim recovery as human drivers, then that's going to improve accountability. To do this, we're going to create a legal fiction of a computer driver. So this is necessary because a computer isn't a person. It's not even a legal person like a corporation. A computer can't hold property. It can't sign contracts. It's not a person. And we don't want to make it a person, but we have to do something. So we're going to have a legal fiction of a computer driver, and we're going to define that as a sustained automated steering of a vehicle. Any computer that does sustained automated steering, that's a computer driver. It may be doing more. It probably will be doing more. It'll probably do speed control, for example. But this is a useful threshold decision because we've known for decades that when computers start steering a car, people start dropping out. They suffer from automation complacency. It's not really a big problem with speed control, but once you take away steering, people have trouble paying attention. So that's the right way to say that computer's really driving and the person's watching. Now, that doesn't mean that the human has no obligations, but it means the computer takes the lead in driving when it assumes control of steering. And when the computer driver is steering, the manufacturer is the responsible party. So we're linking the computer to a legal person, the manufacturer, and we're making the manufacturer responsible for breaches of the duty of care. Now, to do this, the transfer of duty of care is key. We can't simply have that if there's a computer in the car, it's always the manufacturer's fault. That's not fair. All right, so what we need to do is know who's driving when. And the computer driver has the duty of care when it accepts a request from the human driver to steer. Now, the computer could say, nope, I'm outside of my operational design domain. I'm not going to accept responsibility. I'm not going to steer. But if the computer says, okay, I got it, I'm steering, it has also accepted the duty of care at the same level that that a human driver would have it. Now, that this computer driver can transfer the duty of care back as long as there's sufficient notice, and we'll get into exactly how that might happen depending on the automation mode. The computer driver should be held to the same standard as a human driver. So this means if there's a particular crash and a human driver had been driving and that human driver would have been negligent, then the computer driver should be negligent for the same circumstances. Does not mean the computer is always negligent. It just means they're held to the exact same standard we would normally hold a human driver to. Doesn't mean that they have to behave the same. So it's not a requirement to be exactly a human driver. It's just that if a bad thing happens, if harm is caused, and that's proximate to some behavior from the computer driver, then we ask, well, will we blame a human driver? Yes. Okay. We're going to blame a computer driver the same way. Now, something that's important is a large number of traffic crashes and losses are going to also have involved a breach of the rules of the road, a traffic violation. And one of the key principles that makes this pretty straightforward to apply is that if you have a loss proximately caused by a traffic law violation or involving a traffic law violation, then that's a thing called negligence per se. So if you run a red light at 30 miles an hour, as this person doing a test drive of an automated vehicle feature is doing, and that person were to crash, somebody would be negligent per se because they ran a red light and caused a crash. So that's going to take care of most of the crashes. And we're back to, look, if the driver runs a red light and they hit something, they should be responsible. And it's a question of who was really driving. And the position we take is whoever's steering is driving. And in this picture, in the video this came from, that would have been the computer. Statistical safety does not avoid negligence. This is a really important point. If you say, well, we have half as many crashes as a human driver, that's great, but it doesn't give you a free hit. Just as a human driver, if a human driver drove 1,000,000 miles and never had a crash, and then they drive through a red light and have a crash, that's not a way to get out of negligence. They're still negligent. Now, maybe if there's a criminal case, they may get a lighter sentence because they have good record or whatever, but having a good record doesn't excuse the behavior. It may affect the penalty, but negligence is negligence, and your historical record doesn't really count there. So this is a separate thing then, better than a human driver statistically. This is on a case-by-case basis. Did you behave in a non-negligent, reasonable driver way?